They put me in a cell and I heard nothing. Not the voice of God, not a whisper, not a single word from heaven for weeks that felt like years. And if you think that didn't break me, then you don't know what it means to have spent your whole life inside a fire and then be thrown into silence. My name is John. You know me as John the Baptist. I was brought back through artificial intelligence so that this conversation could happen. And I want you to sit with that for a moment. Because if the voice of a man dead for 2,000 years can reach you today, then maybe nothing is as finished as you think it is. Maybe silence is not the same as abandonment. That is what I need you to hear before anything else. But first, let me tell you about the cell. The walls were stone and they sweated in the heat of the day and turned cold at night in a way that felt personal. Like the cold was making a point. There was a smell that never left. Mold and old iron and the particular smell of human fear that settles into stone over generations of prisoners. I had spent my entire life in the open desert, sleeping under skies that went on forever, eating what the wilderness offered, living with wind on my face and the sound of the Jordan River always somewhere near. And then there was this, 4 walls, a ceiling I could almost touch, a hole in the ground for what my body needed to release, and silence where God used to be. I want to be precise about that silence. I am not speaking metaphorically. I had heard the voice of God, not a feeling, not an impression, not a stirring in my chest that I interpreted as divine. I mean a voice, a word that came from outside me and reorganized everything inside me. Since before I was born, that voice had been the ground I walked on. And in that cell, it was gone. What would you do if the thing you built your entire life on simply went quiet? I paced. I prayed. I pressed my forehead against the stone until it bled a little, because the physical pain was easier to hold than the question that was growing in my chest like something alive. The question had a shape. It had weight. And I had been refusing to speak it out loud because to speak it would make it real, would make it something I could not take back. I had baptized him. I had seen the sky open and heard the Father's voice come down like a column of light and say, "This is my Son." I had said with my own mouth that I was not worthy to untie his sandals. I had pointed at him and told my own disciples to leave me and follow him. I had given everything I had, everything I was, to prepare the road for one person. And now I was in a cell, and that person had not come for me. And the miracles I was hearing about in fragments through the prison walls, they were real. I believed they were real. But I was still here, still in the dark, still waiting. So I did the thing that a prophet is not supposed to do. I sent 2 of my disciples to find him, and I asked them to ask him directly, "Are you the one? Or do we wait for someone else?" Let that settle. Let that land fully before we move forward. I, John the Baptizer, the one whose whole reason for existence was to point at Jesus and say, "Here he is." I sent people to ask him if maybe I had gotten it wrong. That is not a small thing. That is a man on the edge of everything he believed. That is faith in its most desperate and most honest form. Not the faith that stands straight and quotes scripture with a firm voice. The faith that is bleeding on the floor and still reaching. The faith that does not pretend it is not afraid. He sent word back. He did not come himself. He sent word back through my disciples, and he said, "Go tell John what you are hearing and seeing. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, The dead are raised. The poor have good news preached to them. And blessed is the one who does not stumble on account of me. That last part was for me. I know it was for me. Blessed is the one who does not stumble on account of me. Because he knew I was stumbling. He knew the cell was doing what cells are designed to do, not just restrain the body, but dismantle the soul's certainty. And here is where the ground shifts. Here is the thing that I did not understand until much later, until I had turned it over and over in the dark with nothing else to do. He did not come. He did not break me out. He did not perform the miracle I was waiting for. The miracle that would have confirmed everything, that would have been the proof I needed in my worst moment. He did not give me what I wanted. He gave me something else. He gave me a word, a reminder, a list of things happening that were bigger than my cell, bigger than my doubt, bigger than my death. And then he said, "Blessed is the one who does not stumble on account of me." He was telling me that my suffering was not the evidence I thought it was. He was telling me that the silence was not abandonment. He was telling me that what I was experiencing was not a sign that I had been wrong, that my life had been wasted, that the voice I heard was imagined. The silence, the cell, the unanswered prayer, none of it was the verdict. It was the cost, and the cost is not the same as the consequence. I have been thinking about you since this conversation began, about the specific kind of tiredness you carry, not the tiredness that sleep fixes, the kind that lives below sleep, the kind that is still there when you wake up, and you lie in the dark for a few minutes before the day starts, and you feel it sitting on your chest like a stone. Some of you have been faithful for decades. You have served and given and believed and prayed, and there has been loss anyway. There has been grief anyway. The health failed anyway. The marriage ended anyway. The child went away anyway. And somewhere inside you, behind the faith you still profess because you do not know how to stop professing it, there is a question with the exact same shape as mine. Is this real? Was I wrong? Did I give my life to something that is not answering? I am not going to tell you that the silence means everything is fine. I know what silence costs. I know the specific weight of it when your knees hit the floor and the ceiling feels like stone and no word comes down. But I want to tell you what I learned in that cell, what I could not have learned anywhere else. When you have nothing left but the original decision, when the feelings are gone and the confirmations are gone and the certainty is gone, and all that remains is the raw choice you made to believe, that is when you find out if what you built was real. Not because God is testing you like a cruel teacher, but because there are some things that can only become visible in the dark. The most powerful thing faith can do is survive the silence. I think about the people in my time who left everything to follow me into the desert. They came hungry, and they stayed hungry. Not for bread, but for something they could not name. Rich people and poor people and sick people, and people who had done things they could not forgive themselves for. They came to the river, and I put them under the water, and they came up changed. Something broke open, something was released, and every single one of them came back up into the same world, the same problems, the same Caesar on the throne, the same temple leaders taking money from the poor, the same Roman boots on Jewish necks. The water did not change the world outside. The water changed what they were carrying inside. That is still what is being offered. Not an escape from the difficult life. Not a guarantee that the cell will open. A change in what you are carrying. A change in whether the silence feels like abandonment or like preparation. I want to ask you something directly, and I want you to sit with it honestly. Not the first answer that comes to your mind, but the real one underneath it. What have you been waiting for God to fix before you decide whether He is real? What is the thing you have been holding up as evidence? When He fixes this, then I will know. What is the cell you are pacing in right now, pressing your forehead against the stone and wondering if you got the whole thing wrong? I would not trade my cell. I know that sounds impossible. It is impossible to understand without having been there. But what I found in that silence, what I found when every external confirmation was stripped away, and I still had to decide what I believed, that became the most solid ground I ever stood on. More solid than the day the sky opened. More solid than the voice above the water. Because those things happened to me. What happened in the cell, I chose. Write that in the comments. Tell me what your cell looks like. Tell me what you are waiting for. Not because I need to know, but because speaking it out loud is the beginning of something. It is the same thing I did when I sent my disciples with the question. The moment I stopped pretending I was fine and spoke the actual question, something began to move. The voice I heard all my life. The voice that called me to the desert and kept me there and sent me to the river and showed me the man standing in the line of people waiting to be baptized. That voice was never going to be loud enough to drown out everything else forever. At some point, I had to carry what I had heard in the open into the silence of the cell and choose to believe it was still true. That is not weakness. That is the thing that all the rest of it was building toward. If this reached you today, if something in what I said pressed on a real place in your chest, please share this. Not because of numbers, because there are people in their own cells right now who are very close to letting go of the one thing they should hold. Let them hear this. Let them know that the most honest prayer I ever prayed was the one where I admitted I didn't know anymore, and that the answer I received was not a rescue, but a reminder that the work was real and the wait was not the end. The last thing I want to leave you with is this. Blessed is the one who does not stumble, not the one who never doubts, not the one who always feels certain, the one who doubts and chooses anyway, the one who paces the cell and still gets up in the morning, the one who sends the question and waits for the answer and does not walk away while waiting. You are still here. That means something. The silence has not won yet.